My story begins on August 23rd, 2005. I was newly married and my husband was at work. I was by myself at our house we just bought. I was up watching TV and our cat was laying on my lap sleeping. The phone next to the couch started to ring. I reached over and answered it. "Hello?" I said into the phone, but no one said anything, so I hung up and went back to the TV program. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. I of course answered it, and again no one was on the other line. So I hung up and called my husband. I told him that the phone keeps ringing and no one says anything, it's just silent. He tells me not to worry, everything will be okay. He assured me that everything was okay, but everything was not okay. Someone kept calling me and not saying anything. I was kind of freaked out, but he told me that he would be home soon, and he told me he had to go back to work. He worked as a guard at Walmart, and it was a 24-hour store. Anyways, so I let him go, and I hung the phone back up on the charger. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I check the caller ID? Well, we didn't have caller ID at the time. The moment I hung the phone back up to the charger, the phone starts ringing. I didn't answer it this time. I just let it go to the answering machine. There was nothing but silence, and I was getting irritated at the person who keeps calling me and not saying anything. The phone rang again and again and again. Finally, I got so irritated and freaked out I answered the phone. I heard breathing this time. I asked who was calling. I just heard breathing, and then the line went dead. I didn't know what was going on. All I know was it was now freaking me out. I looked at the clock and it read midnight, right at 12:01. The phone rang again. I picked it up, and the same breathing again. I asked it to say something, and no answer came, only breathing. I had no clue. I was getting creeped out, and it was dead time. Things started to pick up after the breathing started. After the fourth phone call after midnight, I heard crying and heavy breathing. Maybe someone was hurt or needed help. I asked whoever was on the other end if they needed help, but once again, no answer. I hung up the phone and stared at it, then picked it up and called the police. When the dispatcher came on, I asked her if there was any accidents tonight. She said no, and then went to ask why. I told her I kept getting phone calls. At first I was getting nothing. Then I went on to tell her I heard breathing and crying. She just told me someone was pulling a mean prank on me and that I should ignore it. I said my goodbyes and hung up. As soon as I did, the phone rang again. I should have asked the dispatcher if she could trace a number, but I forgot. Anyways, I picked up the phone and I heard breathing, crying, nothing else. Then the line went dead. Now the calls started coming in around 9:01 that night and continued all through the night. I hung up the phone wondering what was going on and wondering why they were calling me. A few minutes later, guess what? The phone rang and I answered it. It was a friend of mine who worked as a paramedic. We talked for quite some time, and then I asked him if any calls came in about any accidents that happened. He said no, then stopped and went quiet. He began to tell me something that happened about 9 years ago. His father was a paramedic at the time, and he got a call about an accident that happened on the highway. When they got there, no car was found, nothing. His father was pretty shaken up about this, and told my friend about this incident. The call came in at 9:01, the same time the phone call started with me. Now the strange part is, why did they call me? Well, I was about to find out. My friend's father in the late 90s started working as a paramedic, and where my house is, it used to be a hospital at one time in the 90s. I was a little freaked out about this because people had died in my house. He said not my house. The hospital got torn down and my house was built where the old hospital was. I was still freaked out about this because I thought maybe the spirits were still roaming in the house and I didn't know this. He said no one died. They moved the patients to a different hospital before they tore it down. Anyways, back to the story. He then tells me down in the basement of this hospital was a dispatch unit where they would receive incoming calls to accidents that just happened. Well, on a clear night on August 23rd, 1991, they get a call saying there was an accident on the highway. so they jump in the ambulance and drive to the highway with fire trucks along with them. When they arrived, no car, nothing. It was empty. It was really unnerving, and they went back to the hospital. That call came in at 9:01 p.m. Creepy, huh? Yeah, well, he continued the story and told me that the number that I had at the time was the number they had. Creepy, I know. Anyways, he went on to tell me that in the 1970s, a woman died in a very bad accident on the very same highway, and she called the paramedics. The paramedics arrived to find her car in a ditch and her inside the car dead. She had died on impact. The roads were not covered in ice, nor was it raining. The paramedics were in awe. They found no evidence of her drinking nor doing anything else, but she was in the ditch. I was silent for a few minutes after he told me this story. Maybe the woman was calling me because she needed help. Maybe she doesn't know that the paramedics came and she just wanted to call and tell them that she needed help again. But to this day, I still don't know how she ended up in the ditch. Was something chasing her? When they checked her car, nothing seemed odd. It was a strange accident, to say the least. To this day, every August 23rd, our phone rings. My husband knows everything, and he knows every time the phone rings at 9:01 p.m. on August 23rd, it's her calling for some help.
I worked as a telemarketer to earn a little money before fall quarter started for nursing school. A friend was a manager there and got the temporary position for me. I had been working there for a couple months. There was a dialogue on the monitor in front of us to read from while talking with people. The computer dials the number, so I had no say who I call. I can't remember the last name of the folks I called this one day, so I'll just use the name Smith. The phone rang, and a man answered the phone. I asked to speak to Mr. or Mrs. Smith, please. The man said very nicely, "It depends on what you want." So I went into my spew for mailers for donations for the particular charity we were doing that day. Spew being the number of letters they would have to send and what to do with any money they should get back. I asked if I was speaking to Mr. Smith. He answered with a chuckle. Yes, and just how much in postage would I have to pay? I'm on Social Security, and my wife and I have to watch our money pretty close. I think it was like $3.40 in postage. As I was explaining the amount of money and options to mailing, a woman comes on the call and says, "Hello." I said, "Excuse me, I was talking to Mr. Smith?" The woman said, "Miss, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith has been gone for 3 years now. He passed away." I asked, "Is there someone else there I could have been talking to?" And she just said, "No, honey, I'm here by myself. Can I help you with something?" By her voice, I believed what she was saying, and I believed she was sincere. Being stunned, I said, "No thank you, ma'am. You have a nice day." When the call was disconnected, I looked at the girl sitting beside of me. She said, "Terry, are you okay?" I guess my face was pale and I had a vacant stare on my face. I went out to break right then, and proceeded to tell my friend, who was also the manager of the floor. She went in and called the main office and asked them to pull my operator number calls for the day. I told her the name, and the next day she called, concerned someone may have been in the house with the woman she didn't know. She sounded elderly to me. The answering machine came on, and sure enough, she sounded like an elderly woman to my boss, too. Shelley left the number to her office, and asked that the woman call back and reverse the charges. The woman called back a few hours later, and just said she was fine. She recalled the phone conversation, and thought that maybe I had been a prankster.
On a very warm summer afternoon, I was alone in our house and I was taking a nap on the sofa. In our front room, I was having a strange and melancholy dream about my brother, who had died a little over a year ago. I don't remember the details of the dream, but I remember that he kept telling me a certain number over and over and over again. When I finally woke up, the number was still sticking in my head. It was a 7-digit number. After several minutes, I realized that the string of numbers was a very familiar phone number. I just couldn't place the number at first. Then suddenly, I realized that it was the phone number of my grandparents who lived in San Diego. They had died over 10 years prior. My deceased brother and I were very close to them and often called them to talk to when we were in our elementary school years. I don't know if it was because of the heat or because of the lingering emotions brought on by my dream, but I got a crazy notion to call the number. The phone on the other end rang 4 or 5 times, and then someone answered. My heart started racing because I was expecting a message that the number had been disconnected. I really didn't know what to say, so I asked, "Is Dottie there?" Dottie was my grandmother's name. There was a pause. Then the voice said, "Who is this?" I said, "This is David." Then there was what I would describe as a surprised laughing on the other end of the line. Then the female voice chuckled, "Oh my God, it's been so long." I asked, "Who is this?" The voice sounded slightly perplexed, and she said, "Why, it's Nana." Only our family and my uncle and his family knew that we referred to her as Nana. I felt my stomach getting queasy from fright and disbelief, and I squeezed out, "Nana?" The voice said, "Yes, it's so good to hear from you, David. Let me go get your grandpa. He's out in the rumpus room out back." My grandparents had a part of their garage in the backyard that had been converted to a full bar with a pool table and a couch in it, which they referred to as their rumpus room. The line got very noisy, then there was a squealing sound, and then the line went dead. I felt a mixture of relief from the creeps I was getting from talking to my long-since-dead grandmother, and disappointment that I didn't get to talk longer to her, or at all to my grandpa. I have called the same number again in the recent past and got the message that this number is no longer in service. I really don't know what to make of that phone call. It seemed that the person really was my Nana. It sounded kind of like her voice, but younger than what I remembered. And because she knew about the rumpus room, is it really possible to make a phone call to the other side?
My ethnicity is Hmong. Keep that in mind as you read because it comes into play in my story. My incident takes place on 4/6/2007 at 1 a.m. in my very own home. On this night, both of my daughters, a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, finally fell asleep around 11 p.m. My husband was messing on the internet looking up poker chips, etc. I was doing the laundry and some last-minute cleaning. It went from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. pretty quickly, as I was kept busy folding and ironing. I went back into the laundry room, and I was taking out the dry clothes, putting it into the laundry bucket and loading the wet ones from the washer into the dryer, when the home phone rang. I thought I let the answering machine pick it up, but I didn't want it to wake up my kids, so I ran into the room and looked on the caller ID. It said, "Private," but for some reason I answered the phone anyway, and I just said, "Hello?" A very weak and sick but clear woman's voice answered back and asked me, "Patty, what are you doing?" I answered the call back and said, "Oh, I'm doing the laundry and some last-minute cleaning." The person just said, "It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Why are you still up? And why are you cleaning?" All of a sudden, I felt this cold chill and I felt scared and immediately responded, "Well, Corey is up messing on the internet." And I figured I'd finish it, but continued suspiciously and asked, "Who is this?" The weak, sickly voice answered back in Hmong, my language, and said, "Patty, this is Daisy, stupid." Right then and there, I recognized the voice. Oh, it's only my sister Daisy. I asked her why she was calling me so late. Was everything okay? She said in Hmong again in the same very sick voice, "I'm at the hospital having my baby. It hurts so much." I was worried, and then I realized that was why she sounded that way on the phone. Daisy was pregnant and was not due until 4/17/2007, so I replied, "But you're not due till the 17th. The baby is a week early?" The phone conversation continued back and forth this way for a few more minutes, with me wanting to know what was wrong, and Daisy telling me that she was having some complications, that her doctor may have to do an emergency C-section. She couldn't tell me why or what was happening to the baby, and why the doctor decided to just go with that option without letting her at least try to have the baby on her own. I asked her what hospital she was at, and she told me Mercy General, the same hospital that I had my kids at. And then I continued to ask her if she would like me to go there and be with her for support. Now keep in mind that Daisy's voice still sounded very weak and sickly. She said to me, She said to me, "No, I'll be okay. The nurse is coming. It's time to have my child. I'll talk to you later." And then she hung up the phone. So I hung up the phone too, not thinking too much of it. But I was still a little concerned. I knew my mother-in-law had just gotten off work, so I called her at around 1:20 a.m. My mother-in-law works for Kaiser, in a very big hospital as a medical transcriptionist. She studies a lot, so I figured she would know what to tell me as to why Daisy's doctor wanted to give an emergency C-section. We talked for a while. To be more specific, we talked for another hour and a half. My mother-in-law and I both hung up the phone after she assured me that my sister's doctor was the professional and that I shouldn't worry. I was done with the laundry, so I went into the computer room to tell my husband that it was late and that I was going to bed. I laid myself in bed, and then I realized that I should probably text message my sister's husband just to make sure the C-section went okay and that my sister and the baby were okay and the baby was healthy. I got no response back, but I just figured they were busy, and the hospital didn't want to allow them to keep their cell phones on because the wireless signals messed with the hospital machines. I fell asleep. I woke up the next day to a missed call message on my cell phone, and I received a text message from them. I was excited to hear that she had the baby, but this is where it gets weird. The message read, "Huh? Patty, what are you talking about? Daisy didn't have the baby yet. She didn't have a C-section either." I called them, and my sister Daisy answered the phone. Confused, I asked her why she had called me and told me she was in the hospital and having complications, and that her doctor was going to give her an emergency C-section. Daisy just replied, "Patty, I'm not sure who you talked to, but it wasn't me. My husband and I were both asleep last night by 10 p.m. I was freaking out. I felt that cold chill again and felt like I was being watched and listened to. Immediately, I told Daisy that I would call her back. Now, no one knows my home phone because we all have cell phones, so everyone has my cell phone saved on their phones instead. My home phone is there more for business calls than personal. I started to panic and called up my family, friends, anyone I thought may come across my home number and explained to them what had happened. Everyone told me that no, they didn't call me, and explained to me what they were doing at that time. And it made sense why they couldn't have been the person to make that call. Sounding crazy, I called my mother-in-law to make sure it wasn't a dream, that I was really talking to her for about an hour and a half, after talking to Daisy for 20 minutes. She assured me we were both talking lively to each other. Then she asked me something that made a lot of sense. She asked me when I was in the hospital, was I in the mood to be making phone calls? Was there even a phone in the labor room? And I thought for a minute. She was right. When you're in labor and going through all those contraction pains, you shouldn't be thinking about calling someone. And if it was Daisy about to have a C-section, there would be a lot of prepping to do. I was at a dead end. My heart was racing and I felt so cold and numb. Was someone trying to pull a trick on me? I called my home phone company to see if they knew or kept a record of where the call came from, and that maybe someone was stalking me. But they don't trace calls or have a record of any calls unless I request for the call to be traced before the call was made. I was still scared, but I thought to myself, everyone probably thinks I'm crazy. So I took that little 20-minute phone call conversation and stuck it in the back of my head. The next day, and I don't know if this incident has anything to do with what happened the day before, but my husband, kids, and I were on the way to my parents' house to get the last-minute preparations done for Easter and to have lunch. I was talking on my cell phone with my Aunt Alice, and while in the middle of her talking, the phone line went quiet. I thought maybe I may have lost her call, and looked at my phone, but no, sure enough, my cell phone still indicated that the line was active. I put the phone back up to my ear and yelled, "Hello? Hello?" And then all of a sudden I heard a loud, deathly scream, like someone was in a lot of pain, and then the line went quiet again. I continued to say, "Hello?" and all of a sudden I heard my Aunt Alice talking, like she didn't even know the call may have dropped. I asked her if she heard anything, and she just said, "No." She was talking the whole time, telling me what Easter game she was bringing for the kids to play with. She didn't hear anything. Right then and there, the cell phone call really did drop. I tried calling my aunt back, but I couldn't get through. I saw everyone the next day for Easter, but I didn't want to seem any more crazy than I had already made myself look. Still, I continued to ask everyone again, and again, everyone gave me the same answer. Left with no answer and a dead end, I just let it go. A week later, Daisy had her baby at the very same hospital. To this day, I don't know who called, Who did I talk to for 20 minutes? How would they have known my sister was pregnant? Why did they call? All I know is that my sister's doctor wasn't sure of a due date for her son. He kept telling her it might be the 13th or the 23rd and settled with the 17th of April. I think this phone call was from someone trying to tell me that my sister was going to have her baby soon.
Hey guys, thank you all for watching Blue Spooky and I's video, and I want to give a big thank you to Blue Spooky for asking me to collaborate with him. It was a lot of fun working with you, man, and hopefully we could do it again someday. And if you guys haven't, please check out his channel. I think he's a really good narrator, and I definitely think you guys will like his stuff just as much as I do. So thank you, man, for asking me, and thank you for being on this channel, dude. You're awesome. And well, guys, if you guys haven't noticed yet, my channel has eclipsed more than 300 subscribers, and honestly, guys, thank you. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You guys are awesome. And, well, without you guys, I wouldn't be here. So this has been a really amazing Christmas. And, yeah, I mean, I'm speechless, guys. So, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for supporting me. And if any newcomers come to this video, please like my video. Please subscribe to Blue Spooky. And join the Nightmare Army while you're at it, guys. And just remember, the best ideas always come out of nightmares.